All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of Fish Bytes, the Miami Herald's Miami Marlins podcast. I am back with my buddy Jordan McPherson. I'm Andre Fernandez, deputy sports editor at the Herald, and we are here to talk about this Marlins team, which somehow keeps defying the odds. I was there on Sunday when they pulled that, I'm going to say something right out of their you-know-whats to come back and beat the Yankees 5 runs in the ninth inning. Then on top of that, they follow it up with a solid victory on Monday night against the Astros. Jordan, what is with this team? This team doesn't look like it's anywhere. At first, it looked like they were spiraling, falling out of the playoff race, but they refuse to go away. And it looks, to their credit, they continue to hang in there, and now they're back actually holding one of the wild card spots as we record this.
Yeah, this has been their MO all season. Right when you think that they're falling behind, they figure out ways to come back. I mean, they've won since the last time we talked. They've won 5 of their last 6. They took 2 of 3 against the Reds, 2 of 3 against the Yankees. They won their first game against the Astros convincingly 5-1. And it was, not like they were going up against Framber Valdez on Monday. They get 2 runs against him in the 3rd inning. Framber hold him down until the 8th, and then they casually hit back-to-back home runs, something you completely expect from this Marlins team. Jorge Soler, Luis Arias, and Josh Bell back-to-back, just the second time in franchise history they've had home runs in 3 consecutive at-bats. The other time came back in 1998. And of all 3 guys, Luis Arias being the one who called a shot, because, of course, Luis Arias is going to call a shot. But just seeing what this team has done, 5 wins in their last 6. They're back to 6 games over 500. Only about a game or a game and a half out of the top wild card spot. Now, not just having the 3rd spot, but they're in that cluster of their schedule where they're facing the playoff teams. And we said we've talked about the importance of not just re-obtaining that momentum they had in the first half, but finding ways to sustain it. This is the first bit of quote-unquote sustained success that we've seen from them on this half of the All-Star break. First time they've won at least 3 games in a row since coming back from the All-Star break. 5 of 6 for the first time since I think it's early June. To be able to see this type of success, obviously it's only 1 week, but this is the type of mini stretch they needed to at least start to see if they can build something. And to be able to do it against, the Reds who have been good, the Yankees, and to start to get the series open against the Astros, it's a good start. Now it's the importance of seeing what they can do if they can sustain what they're doing here moving forward.
So what you're saying is that clearly somebody went, grabbed the piece of paper that said "believe" on it, taped it back together, put it back up on the wall, and now they're having the Ted Lasso effect in that clubhouse, is what you're saying. Yeah,
well, it's a funny thing that you say that because Skip Schumacher is a big Ted Lasso fan. Another reason why I've endorsed what he's doing at this point. The word "believe" has been used about 11,000 gajillion times this year, whether they're winning, whether they're losing. It's just the phrases. They just keep saying they have a lot of belief. They're using the phrase that they're a big heart team. But again, when Skip on Sunday said, and I believe the phrasing was, those guys just don't stop believing, I immediately thought in my mind, like, okay, Ted Lasso's singing Journey on karaoke night right now. Yeah. But the thing is, if it's working, it's working.
It was on in the clubhouse, by the way.
Of course it was.
No, it wasn't. I'm kidding. It wasn't.
No. When I just think back to last year now, when we're going to on the topic of music, when they had that stretch where they went like 30-some innings without a run, and they start playing My Heart Will Go On by Celine Dion, the Titanic song. And they end up using that as their rallying cry, and they scored 8 runs the next game. So it worked. But
bring on the cheese then.
Yeah.
As cheesy as you want it to be, if it's working.
If it works, it works. That's the bottom line at this point. The Marlins, again, if they can do whatever they need to do to get themselves where they need to go, so be it.
Well, I'll tell you what didn't work for me. That was seeing a team up 7-1 and then having to rewrite my story when Clay Holmes airmails the ball in the right field. But it worked for them, so that's what we're talking about right now. Not my stresses. We're going to talk about theirs and the way they're doing it right now. Like you said, I think in all seriousness, they would like to not be in these predicaments,
of course,
over and over. I mean, even though, like you said, 27-10 now in 1-run games, 8 walk-offs. The serious question is this, I mean, you would think this isn't really sustainable going forward, but I don't know. They keep finding ways to do it. I mean, you look at the MLB standings right now, and there's a little column that says expected win percentage. It's like 7 or 8 wins less than what they have right now, and I think it's because of the way that they're winning these games in part. So is it good fortune? And you have all the credit for being clutch, yes, but at the same time, as it gets deeper and deeper here, playing all these types of teams are playing right now, and assuming, let's say, they do snatch one of these wild card spots and get in the postseason, it's a twofold thing where, yes, you're going to have that experience where your guys are going to know how to handle these close games, but at the same time, you don't want to be playing with fire over and over, because if you fall behind, especially in the playoffs, if you fall behind like that, forget about 7-1, even by 2-3 runs, tends not to be a good thing with the kind of quality pitching that you're going to face. So at some point, some of the stuff we talked about, it's good that you're starting to see those glimpses again. They're starting to hit better. They're starting to, put those runs together like they were before, but you want to be able to do that. And some of it too is getting your lineup more intact, because, Jazz is back now, Soler missed a couple of games, but he comes back. So the pieces of the puzzle are starting to fit together better. So hopefully for them, that means all the stuff I'm saying right now as we go forward in this stretch.
Yeah, just one note on those, the expected win-loss thing, that's completely based off of run differential. So if a team has...
Which is low.
Yeah.
Which is low,
but the thing is, if you have like 4 or 5 big blowout losses like the Marlins had early in the year, again, you look at, they had, I think 5 of their most lopsided losses were in those first 2 months. That's going to skew it all season.
It could skew it a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so but again,
but when you compare it still, though, when you compare it to the Cubs and others, there's still a big gap. Even if you brought them up like 20 runs, it's still a big gap right now.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out they had, I think it's 4 losses from April 3rd through May 3rd that were 10 plus
blowouts.
So if you take those 4, that's 40 right there. That's basically that's the entire run differential gap right now.
No, it is, but I think there is an element there though of you want to kind of try to win these games without it being an adventure and without having to, basically pull it out every time. There is a wear and tear to that too.
No, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that, but there are 2 sides to that where it's, again, where there are a few games that from early in the year that kind of completely skewed that one number that you were going off of. Yeah,
no, for sure. And it does. And, at the same time, though, that's all I mean is that at some point it's like you don't want their luck to run out, and you don't want it to be based on luck either. You want to honestly have a team that's capable of competing in the postseason. And like I said before, to their credit, they have learned how to win games under pressure, under fire, like they have, but that gets more and more difficult when you get to the playoffs. So, or get close to the playoffs as they are again right now. But switching gears here, Sandy Alcantara, looking like Sandy again, complete game against the Yankees. You don't like the 116 pitches necessarily, but he has shown he can handle it. And, they spaced out a couple of days before and after, like you pointed out, to give him that. But the bottom line is Sandy pitching like Sandy. We talked about that a lot in the first half. That was a vital component for this rotation going forward.
Yeah, no doubt about it. 6 games since the All-Star break, he's at a 2.45 ERA, 12 runs over 44 innings. And to point out, in there, 8 of those 12 runs came in 2 of those starts. So if you take those out, 4 of his starts, he's given up just 4 runs in, I think, 32 innings. He has 2 complete games on this half of the All-Star break, 3 overall in the season. He had that one against the Twins to start that second start of the year. This is the Sandy that the Marlins had last year. We're seeing Cy Young Sandy in the second half, and considering the way that he pitched in the first half, I'm trying to pull back up the numbers for comparison. So he had a 4.72 ERA in his first 18 starts. He's down to a 2.45 ERA since the All-Star break. Only four other pitchers who've thrown at least 30 innings have a higher ERA than him, or a lower ERA than him since the All-Star break. And he's thrown the most innings since the All-Star break. Sound familiar? I feel like this is how we sort of talked about him last year. And that's what the Marlins have needed. They needed that guy they needed him to become the anchor of that rotation again, especially with so much youth on that rotation with all these guys already exceeding innings limits. Braxton Garrett's already way past. Jesus Luzardo's already way past. Edward Cabrera's in the minors because his command went awry. He's done better in AAA, but again, AAA versus MLB, it's hard to gauge how much those results would actually apply directly to the big leagues. Obviously, we're seeing what's happening with Yuri now that he's come back up. Sandy needed to be a stabilizer. He needed to be the leader. He needed to be the ace of the rotation. And you're finally seeing the results that come with what he brings in the clubhouse. And this is just what one big piece that they need to be sustainable over these next 6 weeks.
Well, I'll tell you the other guy that needs a flip of the switch, and that's obviously a difficult spot that has been put in, going down, coming back. Yuri Perez, we know, hasn't been the same, and he struggled his first 2 starts back. We understand why it was done and all that, but from looking at it, I mean, we talked to him after the start on Sunday, and he just thinks he's just doesn't have just the ability to locate in the zone as like he was doing before. He feels like he has to work on that. From what you've seen both in person and then watching it on Sunday, you see common threads between the 2 starts, or maybe something that just wasn't there. I mean, you had the front row seat to see him when he was on fire and looking like one of the best rookies in recent memory. Just not the same guy since he came back up.
Yeah, well, the first start, the one in Cincinnati, it was basically he only had command of his fastball. So that first start, it was basically once the Reds realized that, they were like, okay, I'm just going to wait for a fastball. This time he was falling behind in counts. So he had 2 different issues in 2 different starts. Obviously, he's not going to be a guy they're utilizing for length. He's probably not going to go more than 5 innings in any of his starts regardless. Again, he went 4 2/3 the first start, 4 in the second start. And it's just, like you said, he's got different things that he's having to re-identify each time, because during that month-long span, he only made 2 starts down in AA. So it's not like he was being challenged during that month off. So he's having to re-get into that aggressive mode, that compete mode, and wasn't going to happen at the drop of the hat going, okay, you're coming back up. Do exactly what you just did last month. That's unrealistic, especially on a 20-year-old kid, to put that much pressure on him that quickly. Obviously, bring him up here does inherently put that pressure on him, but it's hard to imagine him being able to just completely re-enter the way that he was and in the groove that he was after a month off. And it's not going to get much easier. His next start's going to be against the Dodgers out in LA. So we'll see how he's able to fare there. Right, he goes the second game of that series. So that's going to be a very interesting one to watch. Again, three starts, 3 very good teams right out of the gate. And
right.
It gives you a glimpse of what he can do. Again, we saw his one outing against the Braves the first time he was up here, struggled against them too. It's interesting to see how he fares in terms of the competition wise compared to some of the other teams that he faced back in that first half.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing, and like you said, it's more inherent than actually them saying that. And I know they're saying they don't want to put too much pressure on him, but that's the one thing I didn't like. Is like, you don't bring him up out of desperation and feel like he has to be the savior either, because he's just a rookie. You know who has to be your savior in a way? If you're going to put that on somebody, that's more Sandy, who's came in. He's your Cy Young winner. He's your ace, and he's starting to look like that again. But Yuri's a rookie, so he's in the. We got really what happened is he spoiled everybody with how well he was doing. Now it's like you got to remind yourself, this is a kid that's still developing too. As good as he may be and as good as he's going to be, he's hitting that phase where he has to develop. And I mean, look, you see it not just with pitchers, with hitters. I mean, even on the other side of it this week, you saw Anthony Volpe hit 2 home runs against the Marlins and for the Yankees. And that's a kid who's one of the best prospects in baseball. He was hitting, I think it was like 212 coming in, started on fire, then hit a rut. This is where Yuri has the patch where he has to work through, continue to learn, continue to develop. And then if they can do that, just so happens to do it on the fly over the next month with the kind of lineups he's going to face, hey, you may get a very good one that you can maybe look for to help a little bit. But it's a balancing act too, because you don't want to burn him out and pitch too much as well. And so they're going to have to figure out how to do that in September while they're potentially in a playoff race still.
Yeah, and that's what's going to be interesting when if/when they decide to bring Edward Cabrera back. Because remember, he's technically can come back as early as I think is Wednesday or Thursday. So he only had to spend 15 days in the minors. So I think he's at 12 or 13 already. So whether they decide to give him one more start in the minors and then bring him back, or just bring him back for the next turn of the rotation, that could be another way to ease Yuri in terms of his innings counts and in terms of what teams he faces. You can start to mix and match in terms of your rotation with having six options in there between Sandy, Yuri, Cabrera, Luzardo, Braxton Gary, and Johnny Cueto. You'll have the options to be able to move guys around, potentially do a 6-man rotation. They haven't talked about that yet in terms of this current group, but that's been a topic they've discussed at points throughout the season, especially, like I said before, with innings counts going up for a lot of these younger guys. That could carry into a possibility down the road. And it would be one that'd be logical if you want to keep Yuri's innings count down, but not completely shut him down, and be able to find a way to weave a guy like Edward Cabrera, who, if he has his command, his stuff is good. We've seen it. We've seen how talented he is. The 290, 96, 97 mile an hour fastballs, the changeup that gets swing and miss, and the curveball and slider. If he's able to hone in his stuff and be in the zone, he and Sandy are a formidable 1-2 punch. Yuri is an X factor, and then Luzardo and Braxton Garrett from the left side. That gives you a pretty good rotation, plus the veteran from Cueto to eat up innings. That's good for down the road.
Yeah, what's funny is Yuri has become what they had hoped to have with Sixto. Remember?
Yes.
The three flame throwing.
Wait, Sixto's still there? Sixto's still a thing?
Come on. No, but in all seriousness, that's what they were hoping for. That 1-2-3, all flame throwing Dominican right-handers there, just power pitching. Now they're getting it with Yuri. Imagine if Sixto would have worked out. God, where they'd be now. They're gonna have 4 of those guys right now. But you're right, because in a compressed setting, in a 2 out of 3, and heck, even a 3 out of 5 after that, that's the kind of rotation you want that could wrap up a series quick if they're on and perfect command and whatnot. I mean, we saw it in the shortened COVID year when they just took out the Cubs in 2 games. I mean, that could be, you could have a scenario like that where they face somebody and boom, get 2 great starts back to back, and suddenly you're in the division series. So we'll see. Long way to go still before that.
Yeah.
All right, we've talked plenty about pitchers. Now let's switch and talk a little bit about hitters, and primarily the 2 new guys that seem to be, injecting life into this team. And Skip Schumacher talked about that after the win over the Yankees, how these guys have energized things. Face it, these guys, they came in the Marlins and were part of it as they came in, but this team was in a rut, 17 out of 22. Now all of a sudden starting to turn the corner, as we've seen this week. But Josh Bell is who we're talking about, and Jake Berger, of course, who had the game-winning hit against the Yankees. Bell in 12 games, 326, 404, 696 slash line, 5 homers, 10 RBI, 10 runs he scored himself, 5 homers, tied for second among all players since his Marlins debut on August 2nd, and he's reached base in every game. And when you talk to him, he seems like he has that veteran presence, but at the same time, a guy who looks like a clubhouse guy too. Like, he looks like he's brought that off the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, everybody who I've talked with a couple of my buddies who covered teams that he was on before. Everyone said as soon as the Marlins had traded, they went, "This guy's going to be good for you for that clubhouse," and it's lived up to the case. And my favorite interaction I've had with him was after the game in Cincinnati on Wednesday. Hit 2 home runs, 1 from each side of the plate. Bell's a switch hitter. First to do that in Marlins history, by the way. When I asked him just what felt different about their 2 wins in Cincinnati after they had the 5-game losing streak, and he starts talking, he gives his answer, and he's saying, "Yeah, we've been doing this all year. We've been in a rut right now." And I was just thinking, wait, you've been here a week and a half, dude. And he was basically just talking as if he had been inside that clubhouse since opening day, and he had been there for 10 days. So he had already basically established himself as one of those guys who was basically going to be willing to take the reign, be a voice of the team, and talk with the experience and the knowledge of what this team had done over 4.5 months, despite being there for just over a week. He talked like a veteran, talked like a leader on that group, and players have been saying the same thing from day one in hitters meetings and doing cage work. He was out there giving advice, giving tips, trying not to overstep his boundaries, but also doing what needed to be done to make sure everybody was ready to go. And then when you do that, you do the talk, and then you're able to show it on the field too, it only amplifies the power that a guy like Josh Bell can have on this team. Again, like you said, he's reached base in all 12 of his games. That's one shy of the Marlins record for most consecutive games reaching base to start a Marlins career when acquired midseason. Gary Sheffield had reached his first 13 games back in the early 90s. Bell's done it all. He's had second, third, fourth. He's playing a good first base. Was part of that back-to-back home runs with Soler and Arise. He's just, between him and then we'll talk about Berger as well, just the two of them just make this lineup so much more potent, so much more complete. So, I mean, like, you look at Berger, his batting average on the season overall is still the 220-something, but he's hitting close to, 311 right now with the Marlins, and he replaced a guy who had basically the same batting average, but 25, 26 fewer home runs in Gene Segura. So when you have a guy like Berger batting 6th, 7th in your lineup compared to Segura, and again, no knock on Segura, he was a great guy in that clubhouse, but in terms of the production inside on game day, being able to add Berger the bottom third of your lineup just makes it that much deeper too.
Yeah, definitely, and it really stretches things out. And I think it's also, I'm a big veteran presence guy on these types of teams that are contending for playoffs, and I think his experience comes in huge when it comes to. I know he's not the only one that will have experience in that clubhouse, but it's still a lot of young guys that haven't been in the postseason before. So I think that's going to be invaluable if they do get there. And not only they get there, but I go back to, once again, the next month and a half, the chase, the being steady every day, the keeping the team consistent through these next 45 days or so as you're fighting for that playoff spot. Theoretically, if you stay in it right until the finish, guys like Josh Bell are going to be huge for those younger guys to stay even keel, because there's going to be some ups, obviously, and some downs. So going through that as well. And then either the high of making it or obviously dealing with the low of if they come up short, because obviously this isn't just a one shot and done. This is a team that has taken a big step this year. And even if they fall short of it this season, they hope it's a big building block towards more in the future. But let's talk about the other new guy, Mr. Jake Berger, who I can't go anywhere, whether it's you, Danny, everybody. Like, I almost laughed in the middle of the interview as I glanced over at Danny Alvarez's recorder and it says Jake Berger emoji, and I'm like, yeah. I start giggling like an idiot. I was like, hey. but really, really nice guy too. And it seems like another similar to Josh Bell, the influx of what he's been able to bring to that clubhouse. And you look at his numbers too. Another guy who has reached base in almost every game, I think, except for one, and 311, 380, 467 slash line, 847. I mean, these are the numbers you want to see. There was some concern, remember, that he's got power, but is it a little bit of an all or nothing bat? So far, it hasn't been. So you hope he can keep that going. You talked to him for a while, and it really meant something to be here, hasn't it? Because he looked like he got a little choked up talking about it.
Yeah, so going back in, he was a first-round pick in 2017 by the White Sox, had a really good first year of pro ball, and then basically went 3 years without playing. He ruptured his Achilles twice in 2018, had a bruised heel that kept him out for 2019, and then we had the pandemic where canceled the minor league season in 2020. So he goes from being picked 11th overall to not playing the sport for 3 years, and doubt crept into his mind. He told his parents a couple times, he went, yeah, how good can I be if I haven't been on the field as long as I've been off it? And his parents basically sent him the message going, don't do something you're going to regret, and we're pretty sure you're going to regret this if you decide to quit now. And surely enough, he comes back in 2021, starts in AAA, gets to play every day, gets called up, hits a home run in his first home game with the White Sox, and goes, okay, if I can do this, who knows? Maybe this is my future. And has a couple good years with the White Sox, then finally has his breakout this year, 25 home runs before the trade. And he's gotten to that point where the confidence is there now. He understands what his role is. He understands what he has to do every day to be able to be on the field. And he's in that happy place. And it comes between the family support, his wife, Ashlyn, his 9-month-old son, Brooks. He basically looks at all of them as his support for going forward, a big mental health advocate, which you have to applaud. You need guys like that in this day and age in sports. And he's just been a really good dude. And just fun fact, aside from the baseball stuff, grew up in St. Louis, was also a hockey player, also played hockey growing up. He rubbed shoulders with some Florida Panther guy named Matthew Tkachuk during their early days. No big deal. So he's already buddy with one of the superstars in town. So had a friend already coming in.
Isn't that funny how there's like layer after layer that we keep seeing of, sports celebrity this year in Miami, like the interconnectedness of all of it. Like here's Jake Berger's not like a massive name in the sports world, but yet he knows Matthew Tkachuk, and then there's like another little thing there. I don't know. It's just been such a cool year in Miami sports this year between the Panthers and the Heat and what the Dolphins are doing now, and Messi, of course. Yeah. That the highlight of it right there. I mean, when you look at the grand scale of it all, getting, like I keep calling him the god of soccer to come down here and play for this team, especially. Which if anybody listening to this, remember to catch the Leagues Cup on Tuesday night playing Philadelphia. The shameless promo for our Inside Inter Miami podcast that's coming on Wednesday to talk about whatever happens to Inter Miami in that one. But looking at this Marlins lineup, though, Jorge Soler, 3 homers in his past 5 games. I was going to round that point up by saying the effect that Bell and Berger, now you couple that with a Soler, if he rounds in the form, if this isn't a fluke and he really starts to get consistent. And of course, he's not quite at Mr. 400 anymore. He's fallen significantly below that number, but you're more than likely batting champion. Also can every once in a while pop it out of the park himself, as we saw on Monday night. I mean, look what happened. Soler, him, and Bell. So while that's not going to happen all the time, it shows you that when that combo of hitters gets going, cool things can happen besides just producing runs the standard way too. And those are going to win you games. And look, on Monday night it did.
Yeah, no, and it eases the pressure, because before the trade, it was basically Luis Ariz and or Jorge Soler has to show up or the Marlins aren't winning. It's basically how the lineup just felt like it had to be. And the Luis Ariz drop-off, I mean, he's only hitting 367 right now. It's unbelievable when we think, yeah, the guy's in a slump. What's he doing? Oh, he's only hitting 270 this month. What? You
still take it. Yep.
Yeah, you still take it. And the last 3 games, it's been extra base hits. Home run on Monday, the game-tying triple on Sunday, home run on Saturday. You're seeing a little bit of pop with him, which you're almost wondering if he's sacrificing some of the contact a little bit for a little bit more power. We've seen a lot more fly balls, a lot more balls in the air in the second half compared to the low-line drives, ground balls up the middle that we saw in the first half. So might be some adjustments that he's making there, or just in terms of pitch selection that's leading to some of these results. But just in general, having a Josh Bell who's batting 2-3-4, having a Jazz Chisholm Jr. who's batting either leadoff or in the heart of the lineup, having a Jake Berger batting 7th, it makes it so that you don't have to just rely on Jorge Soler hitting a home run or Luis Ariz having a 6-hit game to get a win. You have options now. You have it so that different guys are around to be able to make the big play, and you're not just looking at, and pitchers and opponents aren't just game planning for 2 or 3 guys each day in order to shut down the lineup. Having all these options, having the versatility, and being able to have these guys occasionally when they have the off days, to be able to have a guy like a Jorge Soler come off your bench and be a pinch hitter in a late key situation, because you're able to have Josh Bell as your DH one day and then throw Yuli Gurriel at first base, or to be able to have, if you had John Birdie at third base one day, be able to have Jake Berger come off the bench when you need an extra base hit. It gives Skip Schumacher a little bit more options and a little bit more depth with his bench as well.
Well, and also Arias hitting the way you were saying, not the power hitter, but hitting the way you were saying, was such a big part of what got them off to this great start that put them in the position they're in now. and you want to keep getting that out of him. But at the same time, again, this really does allow him to really be that player again if he can get it going the way he was. But now, like you said, it's not all on him, because I think a lot of it so much early on depended on him, and depended on him being that good, like hitting 400 literally, that now you see something that is more sustainable in terms of offense. And that, I think, is very, it's a relief really for them. If you're a Marlins fan, you're seeing that and you're saying, okay, good. Now it's all, because when you rely on one guy, you're always like crossing your fingers like, God, okay, we got to keep him in bubble wrap. Nothing happens to him, right? Now you don't have to worry about that as much. Obviously, he's still a key part of it, and you need him there, but it's not crippling as much because now you have some other guys. But still, I think Arias is the engine that makes it all go, and he's that he's the igniter, right? And so like, if you take that out, even with all these other guys, it would hurt. But it is much better to see that balance overall. And let's wrap it up by talking about another guy in that lineup, Yuli Gurriel, and not so much for his hitting, but for something that's going to happen pregame on Tuesday. He's getting his ring finally from the Astros. So you talked to him, Jordan. What? He's been one of the better guys to deal with in that clubhouse, hasn't he, over the course of this season? And what did that? Tell me a little bit about that, and also what does obviously this means a ton to him to get a World Series ring, but pretty nice for it to come with his old mates there, and the ceremony itself in Miami, his new team. Did he talk? Tell me a little bit of what did he tell you about the moment? What he thinks it's going to be like?
Yeah, so this is ring number 2 for him. He won in that 2017 World Series that a lot of Astros tried to just keep hush-hush at this point. But he was, again, this is ring number 2 for him. Also, again, 2017, 2022. And again, remember, Houston was all he knew as a big league player before joining the Marlins this offseason. He played for them for 7 years. He made it to 6 consecutive ALCSs. And to win the when they won the World Series last year, it was more of another validation moment for him. Remember, his postseason, he won, I think it was like 48 consecutive play appearances or something like that without a strikeout. He was one of those, the under the radar engines in that lineup that has Jose Altuve, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, all those big names. And Yuli was a pretty big cog in that lineup, and also just like he is in the Marlins, he was a big cog in that clubhouse. He was a fan favorite. He was a clubhouse favorite, and it's similar to how he is here. I mean, when you walk in the clubhouse, you see a lot of the Spanish-speaking players. They just gravitate toward him. You see the young guys like the Brian De La Cruzes, the Jesus Sanchez's. You see them just going over to him and just talking with him, trying to pick his brain, pick a veteran's brain as much as they can. And in terms of the celebration and the ceremony that's going to happen Tuesday night, he's excited for it. The hope on Houston's side was that every player who was on the 2022 team that wasn't this year would get the ring in Houston. Obviously, the way the schedule works out, the AL, NL, AL you only go to one city. So Houston was in Miami. So they're doing the ceremony here. But the players have said in the Houston clubhouse that they want to be the ones to present Yuli the ring. So it's going to be a few of his former teammates are going to be supposed to be giving him the ring before the game on Tuesday. And just the impact that he had, Dusty Baker gave probably the best quote about it. And anybody who hasn't talked to or listened to Dusty Baker, he's awesome. This is my first year interaction with him. His quote was, "I had him for 3 years. He was here a lot longer, but Yuli was probably one of the most popular guys to come through the organization. Not only with the players, but with the fans, everybody. Yuli comes to play and plays hard, plays smart. We miss him. We were hoping, or at least I was hoping, to sign Yuli because we would have found a place for him, even though they signed Jose Abreu in the offseason. I think the Marlins are very lucky to have Yuli, especially with all the young players they have. The guy still has skill. The legs are good. You see when you get to his age, the first thing that goes are your legs. But that guy can still run. And even with all that praise I gave him, I hope he doesn't hurt us too bad this week." But
you never interacted with Dusty when he was with the Nats? I thought maybe with all the division series.
Unfortunately, not. Again, he started with them in 2020. So I only had 2019 was my first year on the beat. So
okay.
I only had that 1 year.
Especially 3 times a year back then. I thought maybe you might have crossed paths at some point.
Unfortunately, I didn't do much that first year going to the other side. So I was more focused on everything internally.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've listened to his press conference, but I never had the chance to actually like go into one of his scrums, ask a couple questions, and he's a joy. He really is. And again, it's easy to see why people have rooted for him throughout his entire career, both Yuli and Dusty Baker. I can say that for either of them.
Yeah, I always heard the same things about him from other writers, so that's cool that you got. I actually personally have never been able to interview him. I did interview other notable managers that had that same kind of charisma and game, like Joe Madden and others. I remember the great interview I had once with Joe Madden when he was with the Cubs and talking about just different things, and it's always fun when you have those guys that can give you so much perspective of the game, and then they're so personable too. So I'm glad that Dusty lived up to what everybody says, and it's why he's been, such a big name in this game, not just the success, but also I think that part of it too. I think that's why he's so well respected, like you said before. And so that kind of wraps it up. I mean, coming up, big road trip for them. They gotta obviously they're not done with the Astros. Still have a couple more against them before they head out on the road. But we'll see what they can do if they've put themselves back in it, like we've said. But big tests ahead, especially anytime you go on the West Coast, it's tough facing a talented team like the Dodgers, facing a Padres team that at this point is dangling by a thread about to fall out of it, but still an extremely talented team, as we know. So in 1 week's time, let's see. How do you see it? How do you see it kind of unfolding over the next week?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I mean, the pitching we've talked so much about the offense. I need to see how the starting pitching handles these next two series specifically, because that to me will give the real litmus test for how they'll handle the postseason. Because like we mentioned before, the offense could be doing great, but if they're playing from behind, if the pitching isn't up to snuff, and especially knowing the way that pitching gets managed in the postseason, where guy struggles early and you're going to be seeing a lot of the bullpen. If the starting pitching can't handle the Astros or the Dodgers or even the Padres lineup, it could be a real litmus test for how long or short a postseason run could go, assuming they're able to hold things out down the stretch.
Well, we'll see how it ends up for the Marlins over the next week. And, of course, we'll be on a weekly basis coming to you here and keeping track of everything with the Miami Marlins as they pursue that playoff spot. The first would be the first one in a full season. No more excuses. No more, it's the COVID year. If they get in, it'll be really for the first time they really, really get in 20 years. So we'll see if they can pull it off, and we'll be right there with you on the Fish Bytes podcast. For Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. As always, thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll catch you guys next week.